Hey everybody, this is a follow-up to our video that we did last week on our budget. We had a few questions throughout the week and we just thought it would be a good idea to take a little bit more, maybe even a more in-depth look of it.
So you don't have to do your budget this way. This is just kind of what works for us and we thought we'd share, so hope it helps.
Here it is.
Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to add the money that I have in this imaginary account. So I've already set up this account, and this account, as you see, says Wells Fargo. So we just click on this. I had already entered Wells Fargo, and then I put in the balance that's in my account today. So we'll say that the balance in this account is $1,000. You don't enter any balance in this that's not actually in your bank account. It's not your future paycheck that's coming on Friday. It's not what you may be getting. This is the actual money you have in your account to budget at this time. And this is why in the last video, I'd mentioned the fact that in the beginning of this, that it gets kind of tough trying to budget because at the beginning of this, you really don't have any money most of the time. And then as you go along, it gets better. So there's $1,000 in my starting, and this has been put in inflow to be budgeted. I come over here and there's a little C over here, and if I click that, that means that this is actually cleared. And so the app is great in the fact that it keeps track of my cleared balance, my uncleared balance, and what money I have left to work with. So then we're going to start working on our budget. It comes down to true expenses. So your immediate obligations are the things that you have to pay every month. You need food, lights, water, transportation. Your true expenses are those things that you need. I mean, they're not absolute necessities to live, but they're very important to have, such as health insurance, auto maintenance, those type of things. So I needed health insurance, and I have $285 left, and my health insurance is $200 a month. Okay. The rest of this stuff I can decide on if I want later. If I have a debt payment that's $50 a month that I want to pay, then I need to pay that too. And then I know I have only $35 left. And maybe there's something that's important to me that I know I'm going to go out with my friends and I need this $35 to go out to eat. So every dollar that I have has already been given a job. And you usually do this before the month begins, so I know what my money needs to do before the month begins. So you can adjust these categories, and it's the same thing if you're doing it on paper and not specifically using this app, that you pick the categories that are important to you and that you need to focus on. So say you're looking through this and you're like, I actually don't want to dine out. I would actually rather take that $35 and add it to my student loans. So then I make that $85 I'm paying to my student loans. And you're still back at zero, but you took out your dining out. So you have to decide what's important to you. This is the reason I don't really like percentages. So I know that a lot of the financial gurus say that you're not supposed to, like different categories, they have different percentages that you use for each category. But I'm not a huge fan of percentages because I know different people make different amounts. The one percentage that I am a fan of is your rent or your mortgage. I don't really like that going over 25% for us. And that's just our personal goal. I know some people will use 30%, 35%, but I think 25% for us works really well in the fact that you don't end up house poor. So I don't really like that to be over 25% of what we make as far as our rent or our mortgage expenses. But the rest of the categories, it just really depends on the month. This month, we don't have children, but school is coming and it's a true expense. So you want to set up an account for school supplies. So you set up an account for school supplies. And so okay, well, you have to budget a certain amount for school supplies. And so this is what you do at the beginning of every single month. And then when you get a new paycheck, say a date comes in, you get a paycheck, you add a transaction, and it'll import the transactions. Today I got a paycheck. And you put in who it's paid to. There's none memorized, so I'm going to pay myself. I have a category. I want to put it in my inflow to be budgeted. If I want a memo, I can put a memo. And I'm bringing in $500 today for a paycheck. I did some contractor work, and I'm going to bring in $500. It's cleared my account. So then, now that $500 is actually in my account, I come back over here to my budget, and what does my $500 have to do before my next paycheck? So we never did add money to the school supplies because we didn't have any money left, so we couldn't spend money we didn't have. You need $200 for school supplies. You put it in there. you know what, we have a vacation in a few months. I'd really like to start adding maybe $100. So this month I'm going to put $100 in. So on that note, if you're setting up, so I use these as each of my quote unquote funds. Each of these categories are the funds that are there for that specific purpose. And so when I get a paycheck, I already know what it needs to do before my next paycheck. So that's how we use this. So before we did any of this, one of the things we decided to do was we actually decided to start an emergency fund. So this actually came from Dave Ramsey, that actually recommended this when I read the book, was starting a baby emergency fund. So $500 to $1,000, just saving whatever we could in the beginning to put aside $500 to $1,000 so that if something came up, you wouldn't have to use a credit card or you wouldn't have to take money from something else, that you had this emergency fund. And emergency fund for real emergencies, not things that you should have planned for, but a real emergency and you really didn't have the funds for it. So we started that emergency fund, put it aside separate from the regular checking accounts that we used so that we'd have that in case we needed it. So let's look at this here on a different note. We had mentioned the vacation. We had put $100 in this fund for vacation because we know we want to go on vacation in 6 months. So if I want to create a goal for that, I would just go over here and I would put a target category balance or a target category by date. So I know my vacation is going to be in 6 months. So maybe 5 months from now, I would want to have, I don't know how much the vacation is going to cost. Say if I want to have $1,000 in this fund by January 2017 for a vacation, I can create this goal. So when I create this goal, it's telling me I'm 10% complete because I put $100 towards it this month. It's telling me I got $900 to go. And it's telling me basically that I'm actually short for the month, that if I want to reach my goal by then, I actually need to put $166.67 aside a month to actually reach my goal by my expected time. And you can see down here it tells you that you need $66 more than I've put aside to reach my goal of $1,000 by January. And so I think that's super helpful because then you can look at that and you can say, well, if I need 66 more dollars, let's actually make this what I need. And you can see it subtracted it from what you're budgeting here. Okay, so then some of the next questions that I had was, how do you keep track of this from month to month was one thing that comes up. And so if you go to September and you haven't spent, and I mean, you probably have spent it for August, your rent and that type of thing. So actually, let's go back and let's put some activity in here. So to put some activity in here, we go back to our account. We add a transaction. Maybe our rent is also due today. We are going to pay the apartment. And we're going to take this out of our rent and mortgage, and it's going to be outflow of $400. So I just want to show you what that looks like. So you have a cleared balance of $1,500 from your 2 paychecks, uncleared balance of $400, and your working balance, what you have left to spend that you haven't already spent, is $1,100. So that's cleared my account. So I come back over here to my budget, and you can see in August that $400 is gone. So when I go over to September, it's not there. But you can see these other categories that I didn't put in the spending for August, these are still here and they're carrying over from month to month. So I think that's something that's very helpful. Before we were using apps or paper or little notebooks to keep track of what we were spending from month to month and what's carrying over. And I found that more difficult to do. I'm not trying to be a YNAB commercial, but I do really like this app. As you use this app, it'll aid your money. So this, for a few weeks, this won't show up because it can't really go through its calculating algorithm on how old your money is. And then you'll start to see dates. It'll come up with 8 days or 7 days. So you know that any money that you've entered here into your account as inflow is staying in your account about 7 days before it goes out in the things that you have budgeted for. So I think over time it helps because it's kind of almost like a little game when you start to see it going up and you get kind of excited, especially when you hit, if you're biweekly paid, especially when you hit that 2-week mark, because then you know you're actually a paycheck ahead. And so the paycheck you're getting, say in a couple days, is actually not going to be spent for the next 14 days. You're actually spending your last paycheck. And I think that's helpful. A couple other things that came up. One thing was, how do you move money from one category to another? Say in this medical category, I only budgeted $200 for my medical insurance, but I had something come up that was more than that. So I've entered here in the Wells Fargo. Let's enter this in. Fine, payment can go to myself. And then it's coming out of the category of medical is where this money's coming from. And I actually needed $300. I had to go to a doctor or something like that. I needed $300. Once it clears, I clear it. I come over to my budget and you can see here the red stop sign. It's overdrawn in this medical category. So like I'd said in the last video, money can't come from the sky. So you have to figure out how to cover this. And so to cover this, you click on it and it's asking you, what do you want to cover it with? And you can either cover it with inflow to be budget or any of your other categories. You know what? I actually don't need school supplies this month. Let's cover it with the school supply category. And you can see it covers that spending and leaves the rest of it in your school supplies. So now your overspending is covered. But this helps you in the fact that if you overspend for groceries one month or overspend because of an unexpected expense, then you can cover it with another category. The other thing that's really nice about this is having a miscellaneous category with some money in there, maybe $10, $15, $20, $50, whatever you think you may need for just things that may come up that you actually didn't plan on for the month. So I think that's really helpful. And another thing is, if I have an expense that I know, like you go to the gas station every morning before work, or you grab a coffee, or you go to McDonald's, if you know you do this every month, that's something that you actually need to calculate out for. Everybody's different and your goals are different, but I would say that's a quality of life goal because you will survive without it. So you want to do McDonald's or coffee, want to do coffee. So you have this category of coffee and you know, okay, every morning I spend $5 on coffee, every day of the week when I'm going to work, put $150 in that per month. Wait, you can't put $150 in that per month because now you've over budgeted. So now you have to take this back and put in what you can. So you put in $130 a month. Every day, if you do spend a couple bucks, you just put it in there because you've already budgeted for it. You know it's going to come out. And sometimes I think this helped us in the fact that when we looked at this later and we looked at certain categories, we were like, oh my gosh, we're spending this much in dining out, or oh my gosh, I bought that many iTunes things, or oh my gosh. And it just helps in the fact that it helps you plan for the month and know where your money's going before you actually spend it, rather than sitting on a piece of paper and writing down like your bank statement on what you spent in the past. This is more looking to the future and planning for the future month rather than looking in the past. So I think that budgeting is really helpful, and whether you use this specific app or not, it's up to you. But it's essentially the same thing, whether you do it on paper, whether you use this app, whether you use another app. And I think it's helpful because it's essentially online envelope system or a digital envelope system. So I think it's really helpful.
Everyone, thanks for watching. We'll see you next week.
And if you have any questions or comments, leave them down below, and we would love to hear from you. We'll see you.
Take
Thanks.
care. Bye.
Bye.